Viva Piñata! A game series and TV show that was too short-lived, but is given nods to from time to time by Rare. They still haven't made any plans to make any new games in the series. However, in the content that we have available, there's plenty of interesting things, such as hidden lore, theories, and many oddities, a lot of which I have compiled into this Iceberg. If you're not familiar with the Iceberg meme, it's essentially different things tied to a franchise, game, show, or just a piece of media that are put on a template image of an iceberg, where the more commonly known stuff is up top, above the surface, and under the surface lies the more obscure stuff. Some icebergs tend to take on a more sinister tone, going into the depths, but let's be honest here, Viva Piñata is really full of disturbing things. I mean, it's a game for kids. Most of the weirdest stuff is just theories or implications from the content that exists and is confirmed. So this iceberg is more so focused on the strange and overlooked, as well as some of the weirder and, pun intended, rare things one can dig up. A heads up will be that this iceberg in video is mostly focused on the games, not so much the show. This is mostly because it's been years, like over 10 years, since I last watched anything from the show. And honestly, my memory is pretty bad, and I don't really have the energy or interest to rewatch it because of the fact that, I'm gonna be honest here, a lot of it was really weird. A lot of it was really weird. Some of the plots in some episodes are just kind of messed up if you really look at it, and especially from a non-child perspective, remembering what was in it. So, it won't be a focal point. If you want an iceberg on just the show itself, I'm sure you can make one, or have someone make one, but I'm not gonna make one. But it comes up here and there on the iceberg itself because it is, after all, you know, one of the parts of Viva Piñata that exists, but don't expect too much stuff about it specifically. And a second disclaimer. Most of the footage you'll be seeing in this video will be of the Swedish PC port of the original game, which is what I have the easiest time recording. There will be footage and images from other sources, of course, which will be credited and sourced accordingly. You can see it in the corner of the video when they show up, and I will also link the various videos and whatnot in the description. Anyhow, it's time to go down the levels of the iceberg and see what fun stuff there is to discover. The TV show. Some people's first exposure to the franchise was the TV show, made to go alongside the games as a sort of advertisement. It had a total of 2 seasons, starring the 4 main characters, Hudson Mustachio, Franklin Fizzly Bear, Polly Pretz Tail, and Fergie Fudgehog. Most episodes have plots confined to that specific episode, making the show have a kind of sense of the disconnectedness from itself. Though that also means you can watch pretty much any of the episodes no matter the order. Sometimes you have 2 episodes which are connected with each other like a 2-parter, but for the most part, each episode has its own plot. The game developers let them have free range of what it should be about, and it likely ended up focused more on the piñatas than the human characters because of the fact that the piñatas are more marketable. Rare games Easter eggs. There are plenty of Easter eggs to other rare games throughout Viva Piñata. The easiest one to note are the broken arcade cabinets found in the first game, as well as the various nods to Banjo-Kazooie, such in the form of the Bear and Bird statue, the Mumbo statue, the Regal backpack, and Bottle's glasses. Stardust is the Stardust, or vice versa. The game never tells you this directly, like, in-game through dialogue or the journal or any of that, but it's a very easy and obvious conclusion to make. Ginger snaps and foreheads. Without using a guide or looking it up, you may actually be baffled on how to acquire these piñatas in-game. There's no obvious hint in-game to tell you to hit the syrup and egg before it hatches on the third bounce, which means you either have to figure it out through experimentation or by looking it up. Leafos, false rumors. Leafos is meant to give you good advice, to help you out while you play the game, if you happen to talk to her. However, not all the information she gives is necessarily true. Some rumors include putting a badgicle in water will turn it into a sweet tooth, feeding a donut to a pret's tail turns into a malawolf, and so on. None of these actually work and are just completely untrue. Either it might be that Leafos is simply unexperienced and throwing some theories out there just to try, or maybe she's a little bit of a bastard, you could say. Piñatas aren't permanently broken. When a piñata is broken, it is magically repaired, at least when on Piñata Island, or forming at the edge of a garden when broken at one. It is stated that the piñatas are repaired after having been sent to parties, which could potentially mean that piñatas only magically repair themselves when on the island. The PC port. Not very well advertised. There was a PC port released for the first Viva Piñata game. There are a couple of differences between the port and the original Xbox 360 release, which are touched upon later in the video and on the Iceberg. Piñatas are genderless. Technically, no piñata is given a gender in-game, as all piñatas function the same within their species. However, in the show, gendered piñatas are present, which could potentially be that piñatas are naturally genderless, and then if they happen to be sapient, they can then choose the gender that fits their identity. Basically, you could just say that, oh, this piñata's trans if you want. Burger King toys. A bundle of Burger King exclusive plastic toys of piñatas were made and sold alongside the children's meals. This was to kind of just be a promotional thing for when the first game was released. Some of the toys were of the piñatas Elefanilla, Spearmint, Gooba, Fudgehog, and so on. These toys are nowadays rare and sought after by people who collect the very small amount of official Viva Piñata merch that exists. Wildcards. Wildcard piñatas are unique piñatas that have a feature which makes it stand out next to the rest of its species. There are a total of 3 variants of wildcards per piñata, some being exclusively gained for trading piñatas online. In the original game, wildcards were extremely rare, and there was only 1 variant per species, while the additional variants were added in Trouble in Paradise, as well as making the method of getting these wildcards much more accessible. As in the original game, you simply had to breed a piñata over and over and over and over again until eventually the hearts above their heads would flash, which would indicate that the next child it would get would be a wild card. This, however, could take forever to actually happen, as there is only a small chance of it occurring. Meanwhile, in Trouble in Paradise, all you need to do is essentially have the max amount of that piñata to get the Master Romancer, and also collect all of the hearts found in the little mini-game, which will get you a wildcard piñata. And if you do it fast enough, you will also get a twin bonus. You'll get 2 wildcard piñatas for the price of 1. Both the games and show are canon. Pretty much exactly what it says. According to the creators, both the games and show are canon in Viva Piñata lore. This makes for some strange implications, but that is for later. Trouble in Paradise fence glitch / exploit. Alright, sort of well-known glitch. which is often used while playing Viva Piñata Trouble in Paradise. Fences normally don't stop ruffians and Professor Pester from entering your garden, as they simply destroy them when they're in the way. However, if arranged in a very specific pattern in the area next to the volcano they enter from, the fence will make them permanently stuck. They will be stopped at the very edge of the garden at the fence, unable to properly enter or do anything. This can occur unintentionally as well in both the original game and Trouble in Paradise, as sometimes ruffians and Professor Pester seemingly get stuck on random objects and become unable to do anything, either permanently or for just a little while. Domesticated piñatas becoming undomesticated. A rather strange difference from the original game in Trouble in Paradise is the fact that you can no longer buy the so-called domesticated piñatas from the Paper Pet store. Instead of being purchasable, they simply appear in the wild like any other wild piñata. Whether this implies that these piñatas are no longer considered domesticated, or it's just a game design choice, is unclear. Jardinero and his family. In-game, a big part of the NPC cast are Jardinero and his children, Leafos, Seedos, Storkos, and the Stardos. They all play important roles in terms of the game mechanics, but also have their own stories, which can be read about in the journal. The journal also mentions the character Mother, which is Jardinero's wife and mother of their children. She is a seafaring adventurer that occasionally came to visit Piñata Island to see her husband and kids. The Stardust Ghost Fury. Because of the Stardust's more ghostly abilities, such as floating around and being able to go through objects and not being recognized by his family, it is theorized he may either be undead or maybe a ghost. The entry for the Stardust's Shovelhead also implies this, calling him untouchable, and only thanks to lining up to his frequency can the shovel hit him. This theory kind of makes the fact that Professor Pester being responsible for this kind of even more messed up than it already is. Extended/full version of Horstachio commercial. One of the more famous commercials to advertise the first game was the one featuring Hudson Horstachio, about to be broken by a couple of kids, that he offers a bunch of outlandish things to convince them to let him down.
I'm a magical piñata, and if you get me down from here, I'll grant you all your wishes.
There are apparently some different versions of the commercial which aired, which featured different things being offered, with a full uncut version that has all the offers in it.
For you, aerosol cheese. Transistor radio. For you, an uncomfortable silence. How about an extra thumb?
Piñata cards. In Viva Piñata Trouble in Paradise, there is a function which is called Piñata Vision, which utilizes the Xbox Live Vision camera. By scanning the card, you can get the piñata or item displayed on the card. Some of these cards feature the developers in the form of a piñata, and sometimes characters from other games. Language dubs. The PC port of the original game has a lot of language dubs, translated into languages such as Dutch, Swedish, Spanish, Chinese and more.
Een voortdurend veranderende wereld met eindeloze mogelijkheden. En jij mag
Un monde en constante évolution, plein de possibilités. Un monde.
Un mundo cambiante, lleno de posibilidades ilimitadas, porque...
En värld som hela tiden förändras och är full av oändliga möjligheter eftersom det...
Some of these did not extend to the UI, oddly enough. While for the majority of translations, all of the game's features are translated accordingly, with the exception of piñata names. The language chosen is determined by the language set for the computer. If you want the game to be in a specific language, you'd need to change the language of the computer before installing the game. PC port graphical downgrades. Oddly enough, the PC port has some graphical differences compared to the original Xbox 360 release, mostly the graphics being downgraded, even on the highest settings available. The most notable downgrades are the lighting and the texture resolution found on objects and in the environment. This is kind of an oddity considering the fact that the PC would likely be able to handle even more intense graphics than, say, the console it was originally released on. Miss Petula's neglectful parents. The NPC that runs the Paper Pet store is Miss Petula, who often lets the player know she's not very enthusiastic about her job, mostly because her parents have left the store in her care and don't seem to communicate with their daughter much, aside from grounding her, which she mentions as part of her dialogue. In one of her dialogue lines, for when the player leaves the shop, she tells the player to tell her parents, if they see them, that she's planning on running away from home. Another interesting is the fact that ties into her parents is the fact that Miss Petula's outfit is apparently not something she chose to wear, but something that she has to wear for when she's working at the store. Accessories, graphical glitches. Some accessories have graphical glitches associated with them, such as missing pieces or being misaligned on the model during certain animations. Examples of this is the ribbon being missing when a Panaki wears a tail ribbon in the PC port of the first game, or when a Shippopotamus wears a pair of goggles or glasses which do not move properly when their mouths are opened, staying in a strange position. Some piñatas are sapient, others not. Because of the fact that both the show and games are canon, it makes some things kind of weird. Though even if the show wasn't canon, this would still be a thing, as thanks to the existence of Langston and some of the show characters appearing in the DS games. Most piñatas in the games act like animals and cannot speak. However, in the show and with Langston, they are very much as sapient as a human, being able to speak and do a bunch of human activities, like using a computer, or asking you to go out and trap other piñatas. You know, nothing wrong with that at all, Langston. Nothing wrong or weird about that at all. No, what causes a piñata of the same species to be sapient or not? And why does no character in the game acknowledge this strange difference? We really don't know, but it makes me wonder what Langston thinks of the rest of his non-sapient kind. Magic is real. In the Viva Piñata universe, at least on Piñata Island, magic exists. Seen in the form of Leafos and Jardinero summoning items, Bart transforming items into other things, Cedos and other characters teleporting, and both Dustardos and Storkos being able to fly. There are other examples of magic. Nobody really explains why magic exists, or to what extent it is used or capable of, but it's simply something that is commonplace on Piñata Island. If magic exists in-universe in other places than Piñata Island is unknown. The DS game, known as Viva Piñata Pocket Paradise, did it come out after? I'm pretty sure it did, because the Viva Piñata thing exists as a fucking sequel. And the Viva Piñata wiki wouldn't lie, would it? Well, I'm gonna go with what the wiki says. Known as Viva Piñata Pocket Paradise, the DS game came out after both the original game and Trouble in Paradise. It features a mix of piñatas from both the other games, however not all of them, because of the limitations of being on the DS. It is pretty much just another Viva Piñata game where you tend to a garden, now using the touchscreen to use your tools, and so on. A interesting quirk of the DS game is the fact that you also end up interacting with a couple of characters from the show, instead of having all of the NPCs present in the other two games. How the fuck does the family not recognize the Stardos as Stardos? A strange phenomenon, considering at least Jardinero considers the Stardos familiar, and so does Leafos to an extent. He is in the family members part of the journal after all, but apparently none of the other family members have been able to figure out that the Stardos is in fact Stardos. Or perhaps they are in denial. Whether this is them being very oblivious or not, it's still sad that they can't even recognize their own family member after being corrupted. This is also even more strange considering the Stardos lives literally across the garden from his family. How had he not been able to tell by now? Though if the ghost theory is considered, maybe it's understandable why they have such a hard time recognizing him, because he's a ghost. Langston taking over the position of authority in Piñata Central from Jeff. Or Jeffe? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm just gonna call him Jeff. You're free to correct me if you want. Apparently Jeff used to be in charge of the Piñata Central and was later kicked off his position and replaced by Langston. This is to reflect how Jeff was originally planned as the head of the Piñata Central before being replaced by Langston as an influence by the show. Why he was kicked off his position is uncertain, but theorized to be because of the fact that he turned into a piñata or half piñata from ingesting too much candy. Though why exactly this would influence him being kicked off, I'm not sure. Maybe he abused the Central for his own gains, which ended up backfiring in the end because, I don't know, he doesn't seem to be too happy about being a piñata, but more on that later. They all wear masks. Some are used more elaborate than others. A statement from a developer when asked about the masks worn by the humanoid characters in the game, whether the masks are their actual hands or, some kind of mask. This was meant to clarify that all the human characters are fully human and have a human face behind that. However, it still leaves some things unanswered. Such as, if they are masks, then why can we not see Fanny Franker's face inside the mailbox on her head? Aside from, not wanting to model her face inside of the mailbox. Or what does that entail for the ruffians, who pretty much have their entire bodies covered by their masks? Some answers just lead to more questions. Squazzle's name debate. A reference to how in-game, Leafos mentions that the name for the Squazzle, the squirrel piñata, was debated before you, the player, arrived on the island. Being apparently called non-squirrel, as they were trying to figure out a name for the species. Whether this is actually true or not is uncertain, as Leafos does from time to time say rumors that aren't entirely true. The side characters in P-Factor. P-Factor is a minigame in Trouble in Paradise that is basically a little contest where you show off your piñata and contest against other players or NPCs. This minigame features both already existing NPCs, such as Leafos for example, as well as some made exclusively for the minigames in Trouble in Paradise. Some of these NPCs include Maxime, Babokka, Nana Earth, and more. A lot of these are based on concept art of characters that were planned initially for the first game, or concept art for alternate designs of certain characters. They also make an appearance in the Great Piñata Paper Chase minigame. However, they are much more prominently presented in the P-Factor minigame, where you can glean things like their personality and some parts of their backstory through their dialogue. Unknown Blue Flower. There's a blue flower which appears outside of the garden space as a decoration in the first game. This blue flower is not a flower which appears anywhere else, and cannot be planted in the garden either. Most of the flowers and trees found outside the garden space are plants that are available for the player, but this one flower is unique in that it isn't part of those plants. This flower also doesn't make a reappearance in Trouble in Paradise, simply only appearing in the first game right outside this little farming space. Leafos might be a lesbian, as it is very much implied and also agreed upon by the community that Leafos is the one who writes the entries for the items, objects, characters, and piñatas in the journal. One can glean interesting information and thoughts about Leafos. In the entry for the pink flutterscotch, there is the sentence, "A girl, that I may or may not have liked, once told me that the pink flutterscotch reminded her of a kiss." Some people take this as an implication that Leafos may be a lesbian or bi, which I personally think would be neat. Viva Piñata Party Animals. A party game release that stars the main cast of the TV show. It features a lot of different mini-games and the sort of Mario Kart-like racing game. Kind of being a mix between Mario Party and Mario Kart, except, you know, Viva Piñata themed. It is very different from the other games in the series, and has a lot of locations and items not featured in the other games as well. I remember owning this game at one point, and it was alright. Unused piñata concepts. There are plenty of piñatas that never made it into any of the games, as one could expect. Some examples of piñatas that never appear in the game, but had concepts made for them, are a giraffe, a platypus that would have been acquired by breeding a quackberry and sweet tooth together, a hammerhead shark with a sour form, and a kangaroo. A goldfish piñata was also part of the concepts. However, this piñata does actually appear in the game, as the fish in the bowl on Miss Petula's head. You can even see the concept art made for the goldfish appear in the store icon for Paper Pets. Ivor in the Wishing Well. In Trouble in Paradise, Ivor Bargain is strangely missing, with the items he used to sell now being purchasable at Cost-A-Lots. Ivor can, however, be found residing at the bottom of the Wishing Well, which you can purchase after playing through the credits sequence. By donating chocolate coins, you can get him to speak and throw you items from the well, depending on what amount you throw in. It is hinted that Lottie was probably the one who pushed Ivor into the well, likely because she doesn't want competition selling items to the local gardeners, as she kind of wants to have a monopoly, and she probably didn't enjoy that Ivor was actually getting quite the revenue from the gardeners with his very useful and important items that he sold. Banjo-Kazooie Mountain, one of the rarer Easter eggs to spot in the original game. In the distance, across the swamp where Seedas lives, one can see a mountain which has Banjo and Kazooie's faces carved into the mountain. This is much easier to see in the Xbox 360 version compared to the PC port because of the higher resolution textures. Silent piñatas. Every piñata is voice acted. Or are they? One might notice that there are 2, well, technically 11, piñatas that are completely silent. The flutterscotches and moth drops are fully silent, not making any noise. Why this is uncertain, as other bug piñatas do have noises, such as the Taffly and Sweetle. It might be because no noise is normally associated with butterflies or moths in real life, or it may be because these piñatas are meant to be considered more so decorational than proper piñatas. At least for the flutterscotches, as they're very much, I don't want to say lackluster in comparison to the other piñatas, but they have pretty much exactly the same romance dance across all of the colors. Understandably so, because it would be a pain to make a unique one for all the 11 different variants, but they also don't really do much, aside from flutter around and occasionally sit on flowers, which even the moth drop has a bit more personality than the flutterscotches, since they have a much more interesting romance dance. And also just kind of act like some of the other insect piñatas. It would make sense to make both the butterfly and moth piñatas silent, because they are so similar to each other visually. Dragonage Flying Away Glitch. A glitch which is easily performed in-game. You can do this by making the Dragonage engage in a fight with another piñata and then using the menu to send it off from the garden. By opening the fighting view, which can be accessed to monitor the fight separate from the normal camera view, it will focus in on the 2 piñatas. The camera will become strange as the Dragonage flies away from the garden in the middle of the fight, letting you see out of bounds, and see details otherwise obscured by things in the background around the garden. I recommend doing this after having done at least one mandatory fight beforehand, as you are forced to watch the first fight that occurs and will be unable to do anything till it is finished. Thus, if you do this glitch while forced to watch it, you will be unable to access the rest of your garden for quite some time, as this glitch is very long. Giant sunbug glitch. Not certain if a glitch or a hack. There have been reports of a giant sunbug in Trouble in Paradise, which is acquired through unknown means. This giant sunbug can be sent through the Xbox Live service, but more than that is not exactly known. We do have this great image though, which shows you how big the sunbug is in comparison to Professor Pester and a gem tree. Professor Pester is legit evil and fucked up. Even though he's presented in the show as a bumbling idiot of a villain, he's done a lot of fucked up shit. Not only does he employ ruffians to mess up other people's gardens, including Jardinera's garden, he is also the reason why sour piñatas exist. He created a sour goop, which is used for creating sour candy, which is a candy that makes anyone who eats it sick, or possibly corrupts them. This is evident in how he corrupted Stardust by giving him sour candy. He may have rather bland goals as a villain, simply wanting complete control of the Piñata Island and its piñatas, but he's done some pretty messed up stuff to try and accomplish this goal. I will also admit, he kinda terrified me in the appearing cutscene in the first game, where he just wanders in and pushes the camera, and was like, I'm gonna fuck up your shit. Terrifying. At least to a kid. Extra color variants. All piñatas, except for the flutterscotches, have 3 color variants that can be acquired by feeding the piñata specific things. However, there are piñatas that have more variants than others, for being caught in the Pinarctic or desert, and then feeding those same things. This will cause them to gain a different tint of color compared to their normal counterparts, as thanks to having a different default color because of being from a different region. Money and piñata duplication glitch. It is possible to duplicate money and piñatas by abusing the post office, by editing the contents of the boxes being mailed while they are being shipped off. This can be used to quickly acquire Master Romance rewards and cut down on time spent making chocolate coins the normal way. This glitch appears to be the easiest to do in Trouble in Paradise, compared to the first game. Giant and tiny seeds. You can gain a plethora of things from the mine, which includes seeds. Sometimes when the mine uncovers seeds, there is a chance for the seed to either be bigger or smaller than normal. These seeds work exactly like their normal sized versions. The size difference can vary wildly, with really big seeds and incredibly tiny seeds that are hard to see. Ivor has 2 mouths. Something that may be easily missed, but Ivor Bargain does, as a matter of fact, have 2 mouths. One for each phase he has, for when he's a beggar and when he's a merchant. He can flip between the two by spinning his head, flipping his head upside down. This is a little freaky and completely glassed over in the game, left unexplained why he has 2 mouths or can flip his head upside down with no consequences. Leafos is vegan. A very recent thing which has been observed through the Rare Cookbook that has been released, which features an array of rare game-inspired recipes. Recipes which are vegan or vegan-friendly are marked with Leafos Vegan Approved. This implies that Leafos is in turn vegan, which makes sense, I guess. Fudge Hog cutscene. On certain days of the month, a different cutscene will play during the opening of the first game on Xbox 360 and PC, replacing the normal Hostachio cutscene. Instead, it is a Fudge Hog being broken to reveal the Rare logo, though there is a bug in the PC port that makes the Fudge Hog cutscene not play normally. Pudgeon Romance Dance. An oddity among the rest of the romance dances is the Pudgeon Romance Dance, which is the only piñata to actually wear the required accessories needed for romancing in the romance dance cutscene. Whether this implies that the accessories requirement is something that was kind of tacked on later on, or simply not thought of aside from the Pudgeon Romance Dance where it is incorporated into the dance, is uncertain, but an interesting detail, nevertheless. Marshmallow sounds. Marshmallow makes interesting noises, which may seem strange for a mouse, as they aren't squeaks. They go chew, because the developer voicing them is from Japan, where mice are vocalized as going chew instead of squeak. Cut baby piñatas. Originally, piñata babies were meant to look different from their adult counterparts, instead of just being slightly smaller. However, because of time constraints, this was cut. An example of this is the concept art for a baby Cluckles, seen here. Humans can become piñatas, rumor. In-game, this is presented in Trouble in Paradise with Jeff, which is a human piñata, or half-human, half-piñata. He states, "If you eat enough candy and pull a face in the wind, you'll become a piñata. I never want to see another piece of candy, let alone a piñata full of it," as part of dialogue during P-Factor. We cannot confirm whether this is actually true or not, but if this statement is true, then it would imply that humans can turn into piñatas. This in turn creates a lot of questions, such as, why does this happen? Has this happened to people outside of Piñata Island? Is this something exclusive to just the island, or candy from the living piñatas? And can this happen to animals as well? Out of all of the things in the game, this one stands out to me, honestly, personally, because it's just so strange. Is this possibly how the piñatas were, conceived originally? Being turned into piñatas by magical candy-related means? I don't know. It just leaves so many questions that probably will never go answered unless Rare actually decides to make another game. Please, Rare, I beg you, it would be so nice, and I feel like this would totally be the time to make one, because the market would love it. Tamed sour piñatas reverting via mail. A gameplay mechanic, which is not commonly seen, is the fact that tamed sour piñatas can in fact turn back to a sour state. This occurs when you send a tamed sour piñata to a player which hasn't unlocked the tamed version of that piñata. When the piñata is taken out of the box, it will be the sour version instead. This happens in all of the main games, including Pocket Paradise as well. This is likely to not let players exploit each other to acquire the tamed sour piñatas without actually doing the work of taming the sour piñata. Pitch Black piñata variants. A once exclusive variant available only for Piñata Vision cards. It turns a piñata completely black, including sour piñatas. This can be acquired without the use of cards through things like hacking or modifying the game's files to replicate the same effect. Piñata meat. Piñata meat is something that is mentioned in the journal and seen in the form of some piñatas attacking projectiles. Eating piñatas in the form of eating their meat is apparently a normal thing on Piñata Island. Examples of this are the journal entries for Cluckles and Arachnids, which mention eating Cluckle legs, as well as the projectiles of Cluckles and Gooba being chicken legs and mutton chops. It is also mentioned in in-game dialogue that Circus eats piñata eggs if unable to deliver them, both by Leafos and by Circus herself. And it's also shown that other piñatas do consume piñata eggs, such as the Maca raccoon. Are those piñatas edible beyond just their candy? Or are the residents of Piñata Island cooking and eating paper mache animal parts and acting like that's not weird at all. I don't know. I don't know what the cuisine of Piñata Island would look like aside from a lot of candy probably, but the idea of eating paper, it's not exactly ideal. Family mode. A mode found in the original game in Trouble in Paradise, which allows two people to play at the same time using two controllers. Simply accomplished by connecting a second controller while playing the game. It's originally meant for parents to be able to help their kids while they play without having to disturb the gameplay, or taking away control from the kid playing. This mode can be used to give yourself an edge in the early stages of the game in Trouble in Paradise, as the second controller will have the best tools available right away and is capable of things the first controller cannot, like filling a piñata's candiosity by performing tasks. This gameplay mechanic is often employed in speedruns of the game. The Stardust and Seedos special interaction. When you've beaten up Seedos and gotten him on his bad side, he'll start to chuck weed seeds into your garden, and has a special interaction with the Stardust if both of them are in the garden while he's in his upset state. When Seedos has thrown a weed seed, the two of them will turn to face each other and do their laughing animation, presumably because both of them are enjoying the chaos. Or maybe they have a slight family connection still. It's rather sad though that Seedos only acknowledges his brother at all when he's angry and upset. Viva Piñata Candy Stash. There are a few Piñata games which aren't widely known. For example, this Adobe Flash tower defense game developed and published by 4Kids TV, known as Viva Piñata Candy Stash. This game features Professor Pester trying to steal the player's candy using ruffian robots. And to stop him, the player builds towers, invented by Piñata characters from the TV show. This game is likely lost to time, unless someone out there has saved this game, considering that Flash is no longer available. Petting Piñatas. Exclusive to Pocket Paradise, you can pet your piñatas, which makes them happy. Different piñatas like to be pet differently, and if petted the wrong way, it won't increase their happiness. The fact that this doesn't exist in the other games is kinda sad, because I would love to be able to take care of the piñatas in such a way. No 100% reward in the first game. Both Viva Piñata Trouble in Paradise and Viva Piñata Pocket Paradise have a reward/reward screen for completing the game fully, from getting all of the available rewards for the piñatas and plants. However, there is no proper completion reward in the first game. There are rewards for various milestones, but none for actually completing everything, which can be discouraging to some people to not fully complete the game, which honestly I don't blame you. Dude, there's a lot to do in the game and a lot of rewards to get, but it's just strange that they didn't actually add a reward in for doing so. Or at least a congratulatory message. Probably maybe because they didn't assume that anyone would actually try to 100% the game, or maybe it was just an oversight. Piñata mascot suits. As part of promotions and promotional material, there exist mascot suits in some piñatas, such as the Horstachio, Pretz Tail, and Fudge Hog. Whether these suits are kept in storage somewhere or have been thrown away, we do not know. But I do know that these things are scary. Like if I saw this as I was walking outside, I would be running the other direction. I'm sorry. But no. Ruffians helping helpers. Unless you mess with your helpers just for the fun of it and being a sadistic bastard, you're very unlikely to see this ever happen. When a helper of any kind is stuck because of a fence or being surrounded by objects, they will constantly keep on telling you that they're stuck, in hopes that you will let them free. If you let them stay stuck for long enough, a ruffian will spawn in, no matter if you have a captain's cutlass or not in your garden, that you cannot interact with. They will wander over to the helper and free them by destroying the object that's in the way. Leafos will then berate you with a notification, saying, "Shame on you for being such a jerk to your helper," and that the ruffian and helper are running off together, when the helper is leaving permanently, not wanting to come back. Maybe the ruffians have a nice side, or they just feel bad for their fellow workers, considering the ruffians are sort of employed by Professor Pester to do stuff, and the helpers are meant to be employed by the player. And if you mistreat your helpers, then there's some kind of sympathy between the two, I guess. Ruffians speaking. Ruffians normally do not speak, only making a plethora of different grunts, but do actually have dialogue, which is seen in Pocket Paradise, which maybe was added to give a stronger implication that they're here to mess up your stuff. Or, I'll be honest, I don't really know why this is a thing, but hey, good for them. And that's pretty much the Iceberg. If you have any other interesting things that you think I should have included in this, then you are free to comment about that below. I'm always happy to hear interesting facts about a game franchise that I loved ever since a kid, and it's sad to see it not being, you know, loved by the developers as much as it should. Like, seriously, where is Viva Piñata? 4? I guess it's 4. If you count Pocket Paradise as the mainline game, which some people do. Or Viva Piñata free. Viva Piñata 4 free. Just a new game would be great. One day. Or a spiritual successor. That would also be fun. Just something, because it's been so long since we've had something like Viva Piñata. And I would love to see it flourish once more. And it was fun to make this video because it gave me a reason to play some of the game again, and also read up on some interesting stuff that I either had forgotten or missed. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching and listening to me talk about Viva Piñata for quite a while. I hope you have a good day, and this is a bye. Bye-bye.